So thank you everyone for coming. I want to recognize a few people before we start. We have a number of counselors here. We have Councilor Coughlin, Councilor Matthews, Councilor DeFazio. Who else? Oh, and Councilor Abbott is here, and I know that Councilor Berger is entering the building momentarily. We have WETC here. We thank you. I know this is not going out live, but will be streaming later and archived on their website. Anyone that hasn't seen and is obviously interested in this topic, that's why you're all here. But anyone that hasn't seen the presentation that was made before the town council, that is also archived on WET's website under development update. I think if you go on there now, it's the first item under the development update category. So we're here really tonight to answer questions, provide an update where we are in this process. It picks up from where we left off last year in that presentation to the town council. You'll get a lot of context and background on that if you go back and look at that if you haven't seen it already. With us tonight and the folks you're going to be hearing from, the list is brief. It's Ted Langell, Chief of Staff, and he's head of the town's MWRA working group. And Ryan Algrove, who is the engineer and one of the partners at Environmental Partners, which has been the town's environmental consulting firm for a long time. This is obviously a major project that they're involved in. They've been involved in other projects here in town for a number of decades now. In the group, in the room with us also is there's members from the Southfield Redevelopment Authority here, Tom Henderson, Chris Primiano, Pat O'Leary, and Dave Rubin. I want to introduce Andrew Halton, who's here. I would put him on the spot right now. He's not on my list, but I see that he's here. He would be available for questions. He's the town's conservation administrator. And some of the other people that would be available if you want to direct your questions to them. We have John Twohig, who is the Vice President, New England Development. We have other members from New England Development here. Obviously, this is an important issue for Union Point. Paul Sincotta, Bob Daler, Tony Amabano, and that covers SRA in addition to the board members I mentioned. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ted real quick to get into the slide presentation. I want to stress that this is a long process. This is encouraging that we see a turnout like this, because this is something obviously that's going to affect not only you folks in the room, but all of Weymouth's residents for generations to come. And it's an important topic for our town, not only from an environmental standpoint, but a water quality standpoint, economic standpoint. And this is one of several we have planned throughout the application process. I know there are two meetings in the queue with town council. I believe one is with their subcommittee that's been formed recently, or one of the committees that's been formed for Union Point, and I think the other might be DPW, is that correct? Or the full council. So you'll see those posted soon, and it's important to note that this is part of the application process where we'll be identifying a preferred route if accepted, and we'll have further discussions and approvals that are needed as we progress relative to projections of cost once we know a preferred route. And once all the information is completed in this application process, we still have the responsibility of the town council to move ahead and affirm and vote on whether or not we proceed with the submission of the actual application. So that's about, I think, well, Ted will get into that, the definitive timeline, but this is just one step in the process is what I'm trying to convey to you, and you'll learn more as we start tonight's slide presentation. With that, the gentleman that's been heading up the work group, Ted Langell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, this is going to be a fairly short presentation because tonight we're really here this evening we're really here for questions and answers from the audience. So this will be fairly brief. Again, the folks that are here that the mayor went over, a lot of them here to answer those questions that we know are out there. But let's start with, I'm going to start with how we got here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to go through some of the details of our progress and where we're at. And just in general, when we talk about future meetings that are scheduled, we're trying to coordinate them with different milestones that we've reached or are about to reach. And this one, as you know, we'll be making a filing that Ryan will talk about in early April, ahead of schedule, actually. And so this is part of, you know, that milestone. So as we reach different milestones, we'll have different meetings to get feedback and answer any questions. But why we are here, you know, and this is, you know, decade-old news, is, you know, we have a fixed and limited amount of available water in Weymouth. We have, you know, ground and surface water capacity, and that is limited, and at some point, it's gonna run out. And we don't know what that's next 5 years, next 15 years, but we know it's gonna run out. And that's why we need to look seriously at a different solution, and it's been identified that that solution should be the MWRA. There's also, with the limited water resource we have, there is an inherent conflict between using it for drinking water and the impact it has on our environment and ecological resource. We also have an aging groundwater supply, also part of the reason that, you know, we're gonna either want to abandon it or run out. Already, some of it, we're not collecting as much as we originally had planned, which even limits us even further than we had thought. There's constant regulatory hurdles that we face, climate change impacts that, you know, we know and some that we don't know in the future. And one of the bigger challenges we're facing lately are, you know, new and future treatment challenges. And, you know, when we look at our rate right now, it's about to, and we'll get into this a little more in the presentation, go up because the treatment costs are going up. So while we have a certain rate now, we're trying to also find a way to, you know, maybe prevent or offset some of those increases with a different water source. In addition, importantly, is our economic development potential, which mostly includes, you know, the potential at Union Point or Southfield. Something we've been, as a town, trying to get off the ground for quite a while. For us, you know, the last 8 years. We're very confident with the team we have now and their plan and the future. But it's impossible, and it's always been impossible without a new water source. And we really believe, this is really a key point now, is the timing. I don't think will ever be better than now for this option. In addition to needing it for economic development, for the future and our economic benefits to the town of Weymouth, this is important. The other things are the savings that we potentially have. One is we know is that the MWRA is waiving the entry fee for new water users in communities. And for us, for this project, if we went to the 7.5 million gallons, that's a savings of the ratepayers of $31.9 million. That would become part of the rates if that was not available. And that is limited. That is for the first 20 million gallons, and it's for the next 5 years. So if we don't do it now, that's not going to be available. And there are other towns, we're actually meeting with other towns this week that are interested in applying for the MWRA as well. So we know there's people on our tail. We're trying to do our best to come across the line first so we get some of that 20 million gallons available and not have to pay $31.9 That's today's money. That's already went up from 2 years ago when we started this. Now it's 31.9 million. And so the longer it goes, the more we'll save on that. In addition, we're doing everything we can to look for other sources to help pay for the construction of this project. And we have some very friendly folks at the State House that are very interested in this project and moving this project beyond our borders to the south to bring needed water there as well. So we know there's an interest in building new housing with the administration at the state level. And so we think there's a real opportunity to score some help from the legislature and the governor on this project. And with that is why we're here. We'll now turn over to Ryan to get into some of the details and the engineering components.
Thanks, Ted. Again, my name is Ryan Allgrove. I'm an engineer with Environmental Partners. I've been a consultant for the town for the past decade or so. All that time spent on this issue. And Environmental Partners has been working for the town for, I think, over 20 years at this point. I want to start out just by showing everybody where the town's at right now, what the current water trends are. So in the table up on the screen there, you can see the last 5 years, water usage townwide, including the base, has been 4.32 million gallons a day. And that includes the blip there in 2020 where there was a spike when everyone stayed home during COVID. So that's where we're at, and sort of the benchmark we're comparing that to is what the town is allowed to withdraw from its sources. So 5 million gallons a day is what the state will allow the town to withdraw from the surface water sources, Great Pond, and its 5 groundwater wells that are sort of surrounding Whitman's Pond. So that's the benchmark, so 82 to 92% of the volume that the town can withdraw is where we're at. So you can see there's a little bit of room there, but not a lot. And this next slide shows you the potential. So the blue dots there on the left, that's going back to 2010. Those are data points. That's what the town has used for water. And you can see there's sort of a gentle increasing trend. And then the sort of the thick blue line is the potential of the combination of the town's development. We looked at the developments that are already approved on the books, and then looking at the areas that the town has targeted for economic development, figuring out what sort of demands could those see if they were built out, and then add on top of that the basis potential of another 1.8 million gallons a day. And so you can sort of see that in 3 to 6 years potentially, if everything is sort of realized in the schedule that is proposed, the Water Management Act allowable withdrawal gets blown out of the water, and we're up above 7 MGD. So that's sort of, that graph, I guess, is a very visual way to show the problem. So the town certainly doesn't have any other potential water supplies. It's not, the solution isn't another well or another surface water supply, obviously. And there's no amount of stewardship or conservation that can get you that kind of water. So as Ted mentioned, it's identified that really the solution is a regional supply, which is the MWRA. So what makes the MWRA a good fit? They have the water, so they have 100 million gallons a day in excess supply. Roughly half of that is reserved for their existing customers, all the communities that are currently supplied by the MWRA, and then they have 51 million gallons a day available for new customers. And as Ted mentioned, sort of in the next 5 years, they've made available 20 million gallons a day on a more or less a first come, first served basis. The MWRA did a study in 2022, mostly because of Weymouth's interest in sort of pre-planning work that they had done it to that point, to see what hydraulically they could supply to the, Weymouth and the South Shore at large. Just because they have 50 million gallons a day in the Quabbin Reservoir doesn't mean it can make its way through the pipes to, every town. So what they determined is that, right now, today, if there was a pipe connection, they could provide 7.5 MGD on a maximum day demand basis to the town of Weymouth. And with, some work on their hydraulic model, they determined that, they have some potential improvements they could do up by the Blue Hills tank that would increase that supply to 15.6 MGD. So, I guess the conclusion being that they have the water that the town needs, short-term and long-term, they can sort of meet the town's projected demands, in the right timeline. The last thing I'll say is that, I show that it's relatively close, 5 miles away, and 5 miles can be a long way if you're trying to put a big pipeline in, but, if you think about it in relative terms, how far away there's that much water available to the town, it's pretty close. Geographically, Weymouth is in a good position to accept MWRA water, before any of the other South Shore towns really. You can see in this map that, Braintree, Randolph, and Holbrook are closer geographically, but they are not pursuing MWRA water. They're in the middle of constructing their own treatment facility. So this is a very general overview of the conceptual pipelines that are being considered to bring water from the end of the MWRA system in Quincy. Basically the end of it is along Furnace Brook Parkway, and get it to Weymouth. Like I said, it's about 5 miles. Some of the routes are a mile longer or a mile shorter, and the options on the right, kind of the pink and purple lines there, they start and go along Adams Street in Quincy, and they split off going down Route 3A, connecting to North Weymouth. The other option is to split off and head down Quincy Ave towards the landing. And then the third option is to come, mostly through Braintree, down Granite Street, Grove Street, and connect to the town's high service zone. I would say that hydraulically, the Braintree line is the preferred alternative, because the way the town system operates now is that Great Pond produces 85% or so of the town's water, and it sort of cascades by gravity down from south to north. So a connection in that area in South Weymouth sort of allows the town to operate similarly to how it has operated for the last 20 years or so. But all these options are under consideration. And you can see that the green and pink and purple lines that represent the transmission mains, they extend, not just to the town border. It's not as simple as just, connecting to Weymouth's system, right when you cross the line. There are improvements that need to be implemented in Weymouth that have, been determined for all these different alternatives. So, with that, we've kind of determined generally the scope of what would need to be done, outside of Weymouth and inside Weymouth to make this work. So where are we now? We've completed a couple of milestones already. Like I mentioned, the work that the MWRA did to understand what their capabilities are to expand to the South Shore, that was completed in 2022. And in parallel, environmental partners, along with Ted and the DPW and many others, we figured out, what would need to happen inside Weymouth if you connected at these various locations. So, call it a pre-planning process, more of a feasibility study to see if this was feasible enough to continue pursuing. So those things were completed in 2022. Since then, we've been, gathering the necessary materials, and for our first MEPA filing, which is, as Ted mentioned, scheduled for April, so in a few weeks from now, and after which it will get published in the Environmental Monitor. And the way I like to think about this first MIPA submittal, the expanded environmental notification form, is it really gives, first, every regulatory body in the state, federal, anybody who has any interest in these types of projects, to submit public comments. So we will certainly get plenty of comments. There's a lot of interests from the ecological side, environmental side. Every angle you can look at this project, I think we will get a comment. And then also not just the regulatory bodies, but the public at large. So anybody in this room can look at that submittal and make a public comment that the folks at MIPA will take into consideration. And what they really do with all that is tell us what our next step is, how many more filings we're gonna have to do, sort of point us in the direction of our next submission, which would be the environmental impact report. So this is just the first step in this process. That's gonna take several years. But like I said, it's an important step because it gives everybody really the first look at what we're planning to do, and show us where the interests lie and what the problems could be, or what everybody's interests are in the impacts that we might create. So like I said, we're working towards, it's shown here, the SEI. Our goal here is to submit a single environmental impact report and get a certificate for that. And then, at that point, we're really into the process of actual final, design and permitting. So the MIPA process doesn't get you any actual permits. It sort of just tells you what permits you're gonna need, is one way to think about it. So, from design and permitting comes construction, and that, our sort of target for construction is somewhere around 2030. So it is a long process, just to get a shovel in the ground and water flowing. I'm going to talk briefly about costs. So as Ted mentioned, there's the admission fee is waived through 2027, which is a significant savings. I think historically the admission fee has been a hurdle for many communities who wanted to join the MWRA. It's always sort of been the straw that broke the camel's back when you're looking at costs. So it is significant that they've waived that fee. And it applies to the first 20 million gallons of capacity and on a first come, first served basis. The infrastructure costs, so the transmission pipeline through Quincy or Braintree, and then all the improvements that need to be done in Weymouth. The range we're looking at now, depending on which route you take, is $90 to $120 million. We're still at sort of the 10,000 foot view with the design of those pipelines. So that's why we're sort of giving a range at this point, but it's significant and it makes sense. It's a significant infrastructure project. We're looking at probably a 36-inch diameter pipeline that would carry the 15.6 MGD that the MWRA could provide. And reiterating what Ted said, the team's aggressively pursuing funding opportunities, that outside of, impacts to rates. And just a little bit about treatment costs and purchasing of water. Ted mentioned recent regulatory hurdles that have increased costs in town. The biggest one being PFAS, and if you're not familiar with that, it's what they call that the forever chemical. It's a chemical that comes from firefighting foam and Teflon, things like that. It's kind of ubiquitous in the natural environment at this point, but the town, fortunately, the existing treatment processes at the treatment plants take PFAS out, but it increases the operations cost significantly. So, instead of taking the filter media out once every 6 or 7 years, we're looking at potentially annually replacing filter media, and it's $1 million every time the town has to do that. So it's a significant cost, and that also carries over to residuals management. So the town has solids that they generate from their treatment plants that have to be disposed of. And the cost of that has risen sharply, And the implications of PFAS in those residuals is still sort of to be determined at the state level. So that's another potential for significant cost increases. And the other piece of the puzzle that is important is that the Great Pond Water Treatment Plant is fairly new, so it doesn't need a reinvestment anytime soon. But the groundwater treatment plant, the Bilodeau plant on Winter Street, it's 50 years old. And, you know, as any facility at that age, it has a useful life. You know, I think typically we look at treatment plants 50 to 75 years before a major reinvestment or replacement is required. So it's getting to that point. And that will be, you know, vertical construction costs have skyrocketed since COVID. So, you know, you could be looking at tens of millions of dollars for just a rehabilitation of the plant, you know, and even more for a replacement. So there are some costs not too far off on the horizon for the town if they continue treating all, you know, using their own supplies. And just the MWRA's target annual rate increase is 3.9%, which is relatively low. You know, I look at water rates for a lot of towns throughout the state, and, you know, a 3.9% rate increase is more or less just keeping up with inflation costs. It's relatively low. There's a lot of communities who see much higher than that on an annual basis. So environmental benefits, you know, I think it's pretty well established, and I'm sure there's people in this room who know way more than me about the herring run. But, you know, I've seen plenty of documentation and comment letters about, you know, the town's withdrawals from the surface water and groundwater supplies, that, you know, the plan that we have to pursue abandonment of the groundwater supplies that are in the Mill River and Old Swamp River subbasins will bring an immediate benefit to the flows in the Back River and the levels in Whitman's Pond. The other thing that MWRA Supply will do immediately is it replaces Whitman's Pond and South Cove as an emergency supply. The pump station that can pump water from South Cove to Great Pond was established in the 60s because of the extreme drought that occurred. And, you know, I don't know if anybody's seen pictures of that, but Great Pond was, you know, essentially running dry. So all that infrastructure was put in place during that time period. So, you know, if the MWRA pipeline is there and the town has a tap for 7.5 MGD or 15.6 million gallons a day, you know, there's your emergency source right there. It gets you away from having to pump from Whitman's Pond or South Cove in a drought situation or an emergency. And just finally, you know, the ideal environmental benefits would be 100% conversion to MWRA, which is the town's goal here. That is the proposal we're submitting to MEPA in a couple weeks. So the other outside of the environmental benefits, which I think are pretty clear, as Ted mentioned, MWRA's drinking water it's high quality drinking water. It's reliable. There's no aesthetic issues. People don't have any issues with. I don't think that any MWRA communities now have an issue aesthetically with MWRA water. I think the town would be pleased with the quality, and it supports all the economic development and growth that the potential is there, as Ted explained. And one last thing on other benefits is that, you know, when you become an MWRA water community, they become sort of an asset or an extension of the DPW. So in emergency situations, they have labs. They're there to support your town's water department in most situations. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ted, sort of discuss next step, and then we'll do questions.
Thanks, Ryan. So again, We're still overall pretty early in the process, in the application process. So, from what you just heard and what you've known from the past, between our own efforts during the application process, but then also at the state level, when they get the application, there is going to be more than ample opportunity for everyone to weigh in with their comments and thoughts on what the proposal is shaping to be and then what it becomes. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that if there's a meeting, you can't make or something, there's going to be plenty other opportunities to weigh in and ask questions. But we are, again, filing the ENF in the next few weeks, which is first, filing milestone that we're reaching for the application process. And again, originally was scheduled for the end of this calendar year, beginning of next year. So after some consultation with our own folks and then a meeting with MIPA, it was determined we could do that sooner to start that process now, which is a great advantage. And then, one of the next steps will be to confirm, the pipeline route. The mayor and I did sit down earlier with the previous mayor of Braintree. He has sat down more recently with the current mayor. We've sat down with the mayor of Quincy, so we have to proceed with those discussions with them because any one of the three routes will impact one or both of those towns. And most importantly for me, when doing this, and anything really we've done in the last 8 years, we know it has an impact on the community, on the taxpayers, on the ratepayers, all the progress and stuff we've made, and this will have an impact too, and we're doing everything we can to minimize that impact to the ratepayers. And I want to emphasize that I can't imagine another moment in time where we can better minimize that impact than right now. And so with that, again, we're here to answer questions. We're going to have folks, our folks move up to the table here in front of you. There's a microphone that we're going to turn on in the middle. If folks could just come down, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what your question is. If you have multiple questions, if you could just keep it to one the first time around so we can just make sure we get to everyone that has at least one question. We still have some time here, so there should be plenty of time to answer the questions. Before I forget, because I was told this by the library staff, that in case there's an emergency, this is an exit over here in the front as well. Hopefully, unless this goes really long and someone pulls a fire alarm or something, hopefully we don't have one. But there is an exit over here in case of an emergency, as well as the back one there. But if you want to, do you want to do the?
No, I just was going to add one thing, and if you want to queue up for questions, feel free. I just didn't note earlier that we have also with us DPW Director Ken Cannell and Planning Department Director Bob Luongo. You can direct your questions to them or anyone else I mentioned earlier, any and all, or myself. So with that. And also our water and sewer superintendent, Braden Morat, and Dave Tower from the water department. So I think we got all the bases covered. We have one questioner up, Ms. Dossett, Allison Dossett.
Hi, everybody. My name's Allison Dossett, 56 Belmont Street in Weymouth, and I have a lot of questions, but mostly I guess I'll focus on cost. We saw some points on the PowerPoint about 100% MWRA water. My understanding is we're actually getting a blend. So that means that Weymouth's supplier or our plants will still be involved. We'll still be covering the cost of benefits and salaries for folks here to deliver that water to us. Also in terms of cost, MWRA doesn't pay for pipe. And we also have 1 million gallons a day unaccounted for water loss. What I'm wondering is, what are the funding mechanisms to cover all of these expenses? We know that we are not getting the wastewater treatment plant at the courtesy of the developer. As we learned, the legislation wasn't written where that was something that they were obliged to do. So fair enough there. But when I calculate all of these amenities that will be coming to us, as a ratepayer and a taxpayer, I'm very much alarmed about the different costs that I perceive we are going to be incurring as a result of this decision. And we still have 1 million gallons a day of lost water. So I'd appreciate if anybody on the panel has some information to share about those issues. Thank you so much.
I can start with the answer, and again, we obviously have water that we produce now, and we have a rate that everyone pays now. So whatever is existing is already being paid for. If we bring in MWRA water, some of those costs will go away. But the bottom line is, it's gonna be paid for with our rates. That's what water is paid for, with our rates. And what we're trying to do is do it in a timing, in a way that can minimize that. And so if other towns before us, that entry fee became was paid for by the rates. That construction was paid for by the rates. If we have that entry fee waived, if we get some help on the construction costs from the legislature, that is money that's not gonna be part of our rates. And, others can, turn to the unaccounted for water. It is a very serious issue. It's something, the MWRA and MIPA are asking tough questions on. Part of the process, part of this application is we have to address that. We will not move forward unless we address unaccounted for water. That's part of the process. Their threshold is 10%. We're more than that, or more than double that. But we're working hard on it, and we have to present them at least a plan to try to fix that. We don't believe that equates to, if we did fix it today, we don't believe that equates to more available water. We've been asking questions, I've been asking the same questions, and I'm told it's not going to equate to more available water. We believe it's water we're not capturing, most of it, a lot of it, through metering. And the DPW folks can follow up on that. But yeah, that's where the costs are paid for, and we're trying to minimize it by finding these other sources that will keep the rates lower.
You guys want to elaborate on that point?
Everybody here?
Yep. It's on.
You got it now? Everybody hear that? Just to add to a couple of those points Ted made, so our proposal is to, in a phased approach, abandon the town's sources. So the groundwater wells would be abandoned, the groundwater treatment plant would be mothballed or demolished. So there are a lot of costs there that would go away, so you're not sort of paying for the water that the town extracts now, plus the MWRA water, if that makes sense. So, obviously, the staffing of that plant, the chemical cost, the cost to keep the lights on and run all the pumps, that all goes away, so there is sort of a discount there. And the other thing I want to mention, too, is that as far as unaccounted for water, there are two metrics, really, that the state looks at when it's, sort of determining how much water you need. And there's unaccounted for water, which the benchmark is 10%, but the other benchmark is residential gallons per capita per day. So that's how much water does each person in Weymouth use. And the benchmark is 65 gallons per day per person. And the town, pretty steadily over the last 20 years or so, has been below 50. I think right now the average in the last 5 years is 49. So that's something that, that the town has done very well. It points to conservation efforts, things like that, and that makes just as much of an impact as unaccounted for water, if not more, in some cases. If you do the quick math, is if the town was at 65 gallons per day per person versus where they are now, times 50,000 people, that's 750,000 gallons a day. So you can see how much the town's usage could jump up, if those sort of conservation efforts hadn't been what they have been.
I just want to quickly state, unaccounted for water comes up quite often. We do a lot of effort in seeking it out. If we find leaks, we repair them immediately. We do leak detections around the whole town twice a year, which is a physical action. They go out and listen for leaks around every road in town, report back to us, and then we fix them. Hydrants, things like that, we check regularly and try to chase leaks down that way. There's other efforts, David could probably speak better to them, or perhaps, Braden. We're checking the calibration at the plants. We have already, and we have been for quite a long time, started changing out meters throughout the town, and we're trying to identify which ones give a better result or prove out to be a loss of water. We're starting to do some of the larger meters now to see, what we get from that. It's a constant moving target. You can fix a leak and another one pops up. And we're aggressive and we go after it very diligently, I think.
Next question, just introduce yourself and.
Hi, Brian Christo, Belmont Street, a resident for about 35 years, thereabouts. Just a couple questions. You answered one of them. I think everybody in the room appreciates the EPA and being good for our environment. You've sold that to me and I think everybody else here. But you mentioned, one of my questions was, what are the cost savings when we shut down your water treatment plants? Why wasn't that highlighted here? If you put 90 million, 120 million, and these other things on here, shouldn't we put everything out there so the community can see what the savings are? If you're gonna shut down water treatment plants, there's staffing there, there's pumps there, there's electrical consumption, there's some serious savings there. The other thing is, it's kind of odd that, this is jointly run here by Southfield. Years ago, if I go by memory, I think we were gonna supply water directly to Southfield by the MWRA. I don't know if that's correct or not, but, what is their current consumption today? And then you get the state putting, or directing us to put a lot of apartments in. You had used 65, was it gallons per day or whatever it was per person? So each apartment's gonna have people in it. We got a lot of things that we could be pursuing with the state because of their mandates for the apartments and the things that are happening in our community. I would think that if it was a wash, you'd have a better sell here. If they can cover the 120 million as well as the conversions, just food for thought. I don't think it was presented as well as it should have been.
I'm David Tower, the business manager at DPW. First and foremost, when we talk costs, we watch our costs going up daily, okay? Our treatment costs have gone up over 100% in the last 3 years, and they're gonna continue to climb. And as Ryan just mentioned, we're gonna start changing out our carbon filters. We're gonna start with getting rid of our residuals from the plant. All these costs are gonna exponentiate, okay, over the next several years. And our costs of producing water will become very close to the cost of buying water from the MWRA. So to sit here and say, today, what are we gonna save? It's a totally different figure than what we're gonna save next year.
I wanna know what your operating costs.
Oh, our operating costs to run our treatment.
What
No,
are
well,
they today?
it's
You're
not-
projecting tomorrow, I wanna
Yeah.
know what they are today.
Today, they're $4 million, and of just treatment costs, okay? And then another $2.5 million in debt service payments for the new water treatment plant at Great Pond. Those costs are not all gonna go away. And those costs will increase in our next year's budget. So today is not relevant as it is down the future as we
It's
get
an
down the road.
operating cost budget right now. It should have been presented to the.
I just told you what it was. We do a budget
$4 million a
presentation.
day, or is it a
No,
month?
it's $4 million a year to run our treatment facilities.
That's for
it's
all
a
the staff
$10
and
million
everything. How many staff work there?
In the treatment plant,
Yeah.
probably about 15 total between
15,
two
you
plants.
got healthcare, you got all of their benefits. all of
Absolutely,
that.
that's in that cost.
That's in the 4 million plus maintaining the plant with all your filters and your carbons and your electrical.
Exactly.
consumption. Thank you.
Can I just? No, I thought Brian's question was excellent, and I think we should get those numbers on paper. What's that? Yeah, and Ryan alluded or stated some of the costs in terms of the filtration costs that have increased. I know he mentioned that in his presentation. But you made a great point about the state and certain mandates, and you see what's happening in Milton. And we fully expect, and I can't give you a number, but I can sort of glean some projections based on my 20 years' experience on Beacon Hill. And Ted's talked about the timing here. We have a very strong advocate in the Speaker of the House who represents part of Weymouth, including an area at the base. And if you look at the presentation that we made before the council last May, he speaks pretty strongly in favor of this initiative. And we fully expect to get some, based on discussions that we've had, we're hopeful, I can't guarantee it, but I think the stars are in alignment for some strong support from the state in some upcoming financing vehicles that they'll be debating, a couple of bond bills that will be before the legislature. So we hope that 90 to 120 million on the capital costs come down significantly as a result of that.
Yeah, I'd just like to dovetail on quickly what the mayor said. So because Weymouth over the last 8 or 9 years has been ahead of the game with housing production, working jointly with the town council, we created commercial corridor development. Obviously, the town council passed the new zoning for Union Point, that we feel we're going to be very competitive with the state for grants because our housing production has far surpassed most South Shore communities except Quincy, and we've done it, I think, targetedly, not across the board. As you know, we've targeted this development, and we're going to reap hopefully some grants from the state to help defray those costs. The governor's office, the lieutenant governor is well aware of the housing production that we've done. As a matter of fact, just quickly, we'll be submitting in the next couple of weeks our MBTA zoning. And we're hoping that given what the new zoning is in Union Point and what we passed in Jackson Square, that will suffice and meet the MBTA requirements of the zoning. So we might not have to tweak any of our zoning. We're not positive on that yet because Weymouth has been ahead of the curve on this. It's going to help us in a number of ways.
And just finally, I had a little flashback in that exchange because, and Dave will tell you, me and Dave had the same exchange, mostly over email, but the same over what costs are going to come off the books. But the reason they're not included now is, again, we're early on in the process. We don't exactly know when we start this. It's not going to be someday we're just going to flip a switch and it's going to all be MWRA. And no town water. It's gonna happen over time, and right now we just don't know how much when we start, how much is gonna be MWRA water and how much is gonna be our own water. We don't have that answer yet, so we don't know what those cost ramifications are. But trust me, I do ask regularly, and even before this meeting, what those potentials are, but we don't know those specifics yet to have that answer. Next question.
Hi, Kathy Swain, 134 Mill Street in Weymouth. When we make comments here, especially for the DPW, it's not we're attacking DPW for not doing anything. I see you out there every day. I see you out there in the middle of the night in a pouring rainstorm, cleaning up a mess that's been created by a broken pipe. So we do appreciate what you do. And it's not easy work. Matter of fact, I used to fish with Billy Garrity, and I'm a good friend of Eddie Amrock, so I grew up with DPW guys. So my comment is taken from the water audit that was just completed, and I'm just going to read, and it's not on the MWRA website, Ted, so maybe we want to put the water audit up there so people can see it. I don't know. In 2022, approximately 414 million gallons, or 26% of the town's 1,595 million gallons of water supplied is considered non-revenue. Non-revenue water includes any volume of water that cannot be quantified or confidently estimated as a component of authorized consumption. Non-revenue water may not be attributed to both real and apparent losses. Excessive losses in the distribution system can lead to wasted water, lost revenue, and operational disruptions. In Weymouth, the largest source of water loss is real losses, which come from leaks. That's from the report. And it says 94.5 gallons were lost per minute for a total of about 50 million gallons for 2023. Every mile you drive in Weymouth, 4,369 gallons is lost every day. The cost of pumping and treating the water in 2022 for real losses was $615,000. This is water that was treated but was lost in the system. The cost of unbilled authorized consumption in 2022 was $36,000. The cost of loss is estimated about $40.73 per connection. Compared to other towns, Weymouth ranks in the 75th to 90th percentile for water losses. So we do have a problem, and we're not alone. Every town has a problem. But if we're gonna go MWRA, and to quote the assistant director of MWRA, it's awful expensive water to waste. So to be fair to the residents, all residents, we need to get this unaccounted water for down before we decide to sign an application to get more water, or come up with a plan you can show us of a timeline, funding, and how it's gonna get done before we sign up MWRA to bring more water to the town.
Next question.
Anybody want, okay. My name is Larry Cole. I live in Union Point on Cape Cod. I'd be known as a washer-shore. My question was going to be how the compliance that the town plans to submit to the state with the MBTA Communities Act was taken into account in projecting the needs and demands in the future. It sounds like you've been thinking about it, so I just want to make a brief comment. I think this gentleman is correct that the potential at Union Point for enabling the town to comply with whatever the number of units that we become obligated for is a place that it can be done without disturbing the community character of other neighborhoods in the town, which is precisely the kind of thing that torpedoed what happened in Newton. Thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead, introduce yourself, question.
Yeah, my name is Brian Keegan, I'm from North Weymouth. You know, I've heard some numbers, 120 million. I know we pay 360,000 for the consultants to do this study, something like that?
We split it between us and the developers, yep.
Okay, so with based on 120 million and, you know, some guess estimates, you know, even napkin math, my current usage rate is $5.12 per 100 cubic feet. What is it gonna be in 3 years or 6 years?
We don't know yet.
That's what the
But it's-
consultants should be able to.
No, because we don't know how much we're gonna have left to pay. We know if we get early enough, we're gonna waive the entry fee,
Okay.
which is $30 million.
Okay.
And
So
we're
assuming
hoping,
that,
but
make some assumptions.
we're hoping that of that, even at worst case scenario, 120 million.
Okay.
We're hoping a chunk of that is gonna be paid for by,
Worst
through the
case,
legislature.
worst case is 120 million. So
No,
what-
but we're
what is it gonna
pursuing, we're pursuing getting funding through the legislature, through Speaker Mariano, who's very supportive of this effort, not only here, but below us.
Worst case is 120 million. What does that do to my
Without
rate?
without anything, we're expecting something from the legislature to offset
Without
that.
anything, what does it do to my rate?
We don't know, because that's not what we're planning on. We're not planning on that.
But
We're
we could get
expecting.
stuck with it.
We're expecting to get something, and when we have those numbers, then we're gonna figure out what it's gonna cost the town.
By that time, we'll be pretty far down the
But
process.
why would we scare people with a number that is not gonna be real?
Because it's just the reality.
No, I understand the question. So I would say, yes, worst-case scenario could be 120 million. I think I quantified that for you in my remarks a couple of questioners ago when I talked about the interest that we have at the legislative level. I think that we're gonna have an answer to that during the application process, because there will be a funding vehicle before the legislature, before this 2-year application process is completed. So we'll have a more definitive answer before our town council takes a vote. But yeah, I would agree, worst-case scenario, could be $120 million. Right. Right, and this is why when we talk about the stars being in alignment and timing, and I would disagree with Ms. Swain's suggestion that we wait when we have some of these stars in alignment now, including having an advocate who is probably the most powerful or second most powerful elected official in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that has a personal interest in this, right? And he's not a young man, I might add. Okay? So I don't know how many terms he's got left in him. And again, that's one of these stars that's in alignment for us to take advantage of this now. But the $120 million question, I think we'll have some clearer view on during this application process.
Good evening, Maynard Johnson, Columbian Street. I just have a question. You're saying 90 to 120 million. The MWRA did a study in 2022 on expanding into Brockton and Weymouth. And the two routes look like they're pretty close to the same length. The total cost was $540 million in 2027 that they estimated. So where did we get the 90 to 120 million from?
It's on.
From memory of that report, I know that the two options that the MWRA was sort of studying was extension of their tunnel system, which was like $1 billion and 40 years out. I think what you're referring to as the sort of smaller scale expansion.
No, it's the same line that you had up on the board here. That is what's on their report.
I can tell you that the 90 to 120 million dollars was a cost that we got from the MWRA and our
So can you guarantee that rate within 10%?
construction cost estimation, you know, that's 6 or 8 years out.
But we're not gonna talk, because their charges that they listed on there, the 240 million, did not include town infrastructure, litigation, and there was one other thing that it mentions right on the report weren't included. So that's why I'm questioning this, because it just seems like the number's way, way off from what they estimated. And they have a history of hooking up towns, and I would think that their estimates would have been pretty good.
Yeah, I would have to really look at that report to see if it's an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah.
Because like I said, that the cost figure that we're putting out there now, which like I said, that's March 2024 dollars.
And where did you get the numbers from? I'm just curious.
The MWRA provided us numbers in 2022, which we've sort of just adjusted for inflation, added an appropriate contingency, and
So they've published wrong numbers on the site, is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say that's probably true. Like I said, I would need to look in to see if it's an apples to apples
We're
comparison.
saying for our options, their numbers were 90 to 120 million.
Okay. So where can we find the information from them on your estimates? Oh, I know, but
Like-
how can we go up, us personally go up and look them up?
What information would you like other than,
I'd like to see how they came up with the numbers and actually read the report. That's what I'm looking for.
And you know, in general, I can tell you that they came up with an average cost per foot, in that, in their experience is, you know.
But is it published for the public?
I don't think so. I mean, this is correspondence certainly between the MWRA and the project
Will
team.
you share that information with the people of the town?
yeah, it's a cost estimate. That's
Well, I know,
what we're sharing.
I know what you have in there, but I'm just saying from
We
their
can ask them if they have
study,
details of how they
It's not really
ca-
funny.
we
It's a
can-
serious question.
We can ask them if they have, we can ask the MWRA if they have details of how they came up with the 90 to 120 million. More details than,
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't get the difference. It just seems way off. And they paid this money to have this study done. And it's at least double what you're claiming for the town, not including infrastructure and litigation and whatever the third topic was.
but again, the numbers came from the MWRA.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Swain, Mill Street, Weymouth. Just a couple of things on this brochure that we got. And the first one is, when we sign up as a joint applicant, can I ask a couple questions and then go back, or don't? If we sign up for a joint applicant, what does that mean? Does that mean SRA and Weymouth are responsible for the pipe, or just Weymouth, or how does that work?
It's always been both entities responsible for
Okay.
this project. I believe technically there are gonna be two applications, but the folks at the state level are connecting them and considering it a joint application, but I think it's actually two separate filings, two
All right.
separate
So
applications.
you're gonna file for a water permit from, and then they're gonna file for a water permit, right?
We're trying to do it
Okay.
parallel. yeah.
Originally, they were gonna get their own through that same route we just saw, that 6-mile route from Quincy, correct?
It was still our effort, the town's.
Yeah, would that cost that same amount of money that we just saw, that $90 million, just to get the one line to the base? Just curious.
I mean, if it was intended only for the base, I think the pipeline would be a smaller pipeline, so I would expect that the cost would be less, but it would only benefit the base, I guess.
But I think also people would weigh in that they want a regional solution too. So some might suggest that we have the same size if it's gonna go south.
The regional solution needs the big pipe from the Blue Hills, is that, if I
It'd be-
read that correctly? And I read in the MWRA report that that's 2040, that would be the first that could happen, is that correct?
No,
No,
to
24
start
to get the-
construction?
To get the pipe here by the year 2040?
No.
No?
That may have been an extension of their tunnel system, so that's
Okay.
going further back from Quincy.
All right, so it'd be quicker.
Yeah, the options we presented there, that is the most expeditious way that we can get water from MWRA to Weymouth.
All
And
right.
that's up to right now it's up to 7.5 million gallons a day. If they have some infrastructure improvements, they can make it Blue Hills to put that up to, I believe, 15.6.
Okay,
So
so
that's a
that-
little extra that they have to do to provide more
Perfect,
water
thank you.
this way.
I want to weigh in on that, and it ties in with the gentleman from North Weymouth earlier comments about the 120 million and state participation to hopefully bring that 120 million down. One of the things that is being discussed is, and it relates to the size of the pipe, when the infrastructure is put in, will it allow enough volume to assist in the future communities south of us, thus the regional solution, thus the state participation, thus the contribution to bring the 120 million down?
I would just like to add to the mayor's comment
Just grab the
too.
mic.
As far as the cost factor of
Just for the.
120 million, the ratepayers today are paying for a $40 million water treatment plant. Those payments will drop off the table in the next 5 or 6 years. So that $40 million that we're paying for today, that debt service would go to the other project.
All right, so then, Mayor, since you're up there, MWRA would allow us to potentially
promotion.
utilize Great Pond as a recreational resource, restore river herring patches, which is awesome. It would mean improved water qualities, Whitman's Pond, and what you end with, that we no longer use Weymouth as a water source. And is that a reality? Just, that's what we're afraid of. I mean,
You were at the presentation before the council when, for instance, Scott Dowd, who is more versed on this than I am, who
Right.
serves on our Conservation Commission, and if Andrew, you want to jump in, you're welcome. But, he's regarded internationally as an expert on some of these matters, and, we're relying on his input, we're relying on the consultants, but that is certainly the goal,
that is
absolutely.
the goal. Now, but MWRA regulations don't let you abandon a water source, so how do we just give up Great Pond? Unless, I'd be excited if it could all happen this way.
Right, and that's all what this process, the next couple of years is about. That's the plan we propose, and we get feedback from all the regulatory agencies, including the Department of Conservation and Recreation, which runs the interbasin transfer permit, which is the primary permit we're going for. We're trying to take water from the Quabbin Reservoir, take it out of that basin and put it in Weymouth. So that's really the big permit we're after. And like you said, sources can be abandoned based on economic viability, treatment viability, or environmental viability. So, that's the process we're in. We don't have an answer yet because we haven't submitted, we're on our first filing, so I
Right.
think.
It makes sense on the wells, because they're a mess and they're not working correctly, so that's easy to abandon. But I don't know how you can legally abandon Great Pond And so, but,
But we can make the case and we can make it, it's economic too, but even if we
Yeah, that's
couldn't,
great.
and no, they're pushing back, they're asking hard questions like this at the state level
Okay.
too. And I've directed the team that the goal, again, for whatever plan we come up with, is to never have to use the South Cove or Whitman's Pond as part of our water usage.
That'd be great.
And whatever that plan is, if we have to keep using Great Pond, we'll do it at a capacity where we, and use MWRA at a capacity where we will never need Whitman's Pond again.
and, okay, so just on your presentation here, on this page, current water trends, I took this out of the recent MIPA certificate from the DEP, that with finished water, our average is 4.26, and with raw water, we're 4.62. So those are different than the numbers that you're showing here. So this is the question. We're gonna decide on MWRA, do we need water? Well, are we at 4.26 or 4.62? So I think before we begin to sign an application for MWRA, we go to the state and we find out whether we're regulated by raw or finished water.
Right, and we've had this discussion before, and now that's comparing apples and oranges, because you can't have a finished water limit and a raw water use number. If we went by raw water, our $5 million cap would be higher if we used raw water. And so,
Not what the state just said in the MIPA. The cap is 5.0, no matter
for
what.
finished,
For finished water, but we just did our registration over, and we didn't ask for any more water.
nope, we don't
And
plan to.
and according to Mayor Headland, he just told a letter that they're not gonna ask for an increase.
But
So we're
again,
gonna say it's
you were
5.0.
You were using raw water numbers against
Because
the
the state-
finished, against the finished cap. Those are two different numbers.
The state regulates in raw water,
But
not
allowed
finished.
us to report in finished water. They allow us to report in finished water. Our cap is 5 million, and we use 4.23 right now.
Yes, but you use 4.62 of raw.
But again, our cap is $5 million of finished water.
5 million
We
gallons,
use
yeah.
5 million gallons of finished water, and we use 4.32. You can't use raw water against the finished cap.
So, but the state has asked you to answer that question. Will you be willing to go to the state and answer that question? And whether we're gonna regulate in finished or whether we're gonna come up with one?
They have allowed us to report in finished water. We don't
Right.
do it on our own.
Right.
They have allowed us to do that.
But but when we went over in 2022, was it on finished or was it on raw?
Finished.
It was on raw.
What
And we went
year?
over in 2023, was it on finished or was it on raw? And it's on, I gotta understand, it's because the Winter Street well is not working. We're supposed to get 0.49 million gallons a day out of that well, and it hasn't been working. So it's not giving us the water we have, so we're going over by our ponds. On our surface water up at Great Pond, we're about 4.69, when our legal limit, safe limit's supposed to be 3.6 something. So I think we need to come up with that answer. They're asking you in DEP, and we're asking you as residents, just get the answer.
The answer is, our cap is 5 million gallons a day, and we're at 4.23 billion gallons a day of use. Go ahead.
Allison Dossett in Belmont Street, 56. When you speak of the 90 to 120 million, does that include the wastewater treatment plant?
No,
It doesn't, so that's gonna be an extra
this
cost?
is the construction of the water pipe to
Okay.
Weymouth.
So we were originally under the impression that the legislation had been written in a way that the cost was on the developer for the wastewater treatment plant. But we found out last May, and Mr. Tuhig was honest, he said, I'm not obliged to follow this because the legislation was written incorrectly. So is that a cost that the residents or the ratepayers will incur as well?
I'm not sure what cost you're referring to. We're talking about an MWRA application process for water.
Right, I'm just trying to get a sense of the overall costs of all of this for residents here in Weymouth.
Yeah, this plan does not include building anything with wastewater treatment plant
So
for
the
water.
base wastewater is just gonna come back into the Weymouth system? And there's no other construction that's required for that?
No, there is. For that, for sewer, there absolutely is construction that's required for that, and we do expect that the developer will be responsible for.
Well, he said that he wasn't obliged the way the legislation was written, so that worries me.
It worries me too, if that's what.
Right.
No,
And I would hope, and
no,
it was
but-
written by Mr. Mariano, and so I'm hoping, Mayor, you can use your powers of persuasion
But
at the
did he
state
say
level that
not
we're not on the
obligated-
hook for that blunder.
But not obligated to a plant, was that the, what was
The
that?
cost associated with the developer now not really being obliged.
That's not, that hasn't been part of our conversation. I mean, I think the known thing is that that's a developer, like the water, you know, the developer is part of that.
The developer, you think, is responsible ultimately?
I think it's a partnership, and yeah, we hold them responsible for the cost of, because the majority of what we're bringing in is gonna be used for their development, so yes.
So for the wastewater treatment plant and the wastewater,
For
That whole
getting,
process at the
for
base.
wastewater in general, I don't know if there's a plant.
no, well, so down at the
yeah.
base, wastewater,
We
either
would
coming
have
into
to,
our
we would
system.
have to improve our infrastructure to that capacity, yes.
Right. And Mr. Mariano wrote that legislation, and if it was written incorrectly, I'm certainly hoping that the state will help us, because it's just gonna be one more burden of cost
Yep.
on the backs of the
But
people
again,
of
we're
Weymouth.
dealing with the water construction right now. And
It's
then-
all interconnected.
It
and
is, but,
Infrastructure is all
but we're here
interconnected.
to talk about the water
I
construction.
know what we're
and
here
it'll be
for,
the
but
same- and it'll
it's
be
all
the s-
part of it,
No,
and
it'll be the
people should
same
know.
process for that.
So another question that I have, Mayor, we were at the candidates night at North Weymouth, and I think you said that North Weymouth was unlikely to be a route for MWRA, is that correct?
It's been one of the options that's been looked at since before we decided to partner with Union Point on this. And I think it was offering a layman's perspective, and I think it was addressed tonight what we think the best route is hydrologically and other factors. So it was one of the three alternatives studied. But
It was
when I
studied,
said
right.
that, it was because it doesn't make the most sense.
So where are we then, if it's Braintree, or anyone, what stage are we at with our intermunicipal agreements?
We're in initial discussions with both Quincy and Braintree.
And you spoke to Mayor Kokoros and Mayor Joyce?
I probably spent 2 hours with Mayor Kokoros on this, which now obviously is moot point, but I had an initial meeting 2.5 weeks ago with Mayor Joyce on this.
Okay, so you did meet, you met with her?
Yeah, and it's been a cooperative tone. I mean, we've got a lot of communal issues with Braintree that we need their cooperation on and they need our cooperation on. This is a big ask we're gonna have of them though, for sure.
Right, they know, and they've
Yep.
already signaled that they're thinking about how this will benefit them.
Yep.
In terms of mitigation.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And just a comment about Braintree, and when we talk about the stars being aligned and this window of time for communities to apply with the application fee being waived, I witnessed personally at Mayor's Association meetings, Mayor Sullivan, berating might be too strong of a word, admonishing Executive Director Lasky of the MWRA over the application fee at a time when the application fees were not going to be waived for new communities. And he was in the midst of discussions with Randolph and Holbrook over the cost of a very, very expensive new water treatment plant. And he was looking at MWRA water as an option, as an alternative to that extremely costly capital project in building that new treatment plant. And at that time, there was no opportunity given by the MWRA to waive the application fee, which is why he then went and pursued those discussions, which led to, and ultimately the deal was finished by Mayor Kokoros to build that water treatment plant. I think if history had been a little bit different and the MWRA board had voted to waive those application fees a little sooner, you would not see the construction of a very costly water treatment plant between Tri-Town, Holbrook, Braintree, and Randolph. You would see Braintree leaping at the opportunity to join MWRA at that point.
Brian Keegan, North Weymouth. And looking at the slide on the infrastructure improvements, it's obvious that the green line to South Weymouth is the choice, just because of all the engineering work associated with all the extraneous pipelines there. But also, you know, because it comes into the high-pressure side. But also, I think one other point is that it's the best way to get the water to Southfield. And I'm just wondering if the town is being taken on a ride here by the owners of the developers at Southfield. Because right now, in the consultant's report, it mentions that North Weymouth is impoverished as far as water. We have an insufficient water supply during peak times. And if we want to develop property on Bridge Street, it's gonna exacerbate, make that situation worse. And I don't see any green lines going to the Great Hill Tank.
Let me take a stab at that and pretend that I'm an engineer for a minute.
Okay.
But I think, and Ryan, you can help me out, but
So
bail me out.
just extend the green line down to the Great Hill Tank.
Well, I mean, he hit upon hydrology and other factors, but I think, you know, that direct route to the new treatment plant, which then becomes a pump station eventually, there's some benefit in that. Am I right? I hope.
You nailed it.
Well, it's sort of driven by the fact that, the previous commenter about the fact that Great Pond will remain an active water source. So having the
Right.
pipeline come into where your
And again, the line
distribution
is
starts.
just, the line is just where it comes into town. That water then goes through our infrastructure to North Weymouth.
Which is insufficient right now to get the water to North Weymouth.
Well, Ryan can, we do need some upgrades, but
Yeah,
and
the
it
green
has,
line has to come down to the Great Hill Tank.
no, it's gonna be within our infrastructure.
So, you know, the way the town's water system works now is you've got Great Pond and you've got the wells. Yeah, there are no water supplies in North Weymouth right now.
Right.
What North Weymouth. if you
Unless
see-
we put a desalination plant in when we secede from
Right.
Weymouth.
Nobody's proposing that yet. So, you know, North Weymouth's supply is completely dependent upon water just flowing by gravity from the tanks in, you know, central and south Weymouth.
Is it
To the north.
sufficient, the infrastructure right now?
Well, I think
Especially with
North Weymouth-
development of 3A.
I think what you're probably referring to is the age and the material of the pipes in North Weymouth. There's a lot of cast iron in North Weymouth. And that is true, and that, you know, the town targets infrastructure improvements, pipe replacement on an annual basis. And, you know, there have been improvements in North Weymouth, and I think, you know, will continue to be. But I think it's sort of out of the realm of the changing of where the water supply is coming from.
I hear 120 million, I think that could cover a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's covering that green line.
Just extended to the Great Hill Tank.
My name is Lou Rizzo. I live up on Pleasant Street in South Weymouth. I grew up right down the street from the reservoir. I don't have any questions. I have a few comments I'd like to make about the future of Great Pond. Whether it's maintained as a water source for future need in case of an emergency. I remember the drought that was mentioned in the mid-'60s when I was a young kid, maybe not too young. But I remember when Great Pond dried up to a mud puddle. That's when they found that carved out canoe that was on display in this library for many, many years.
Still is.
Is it still here? I thought, okay. I
No,
thought it was-
upstairs, second floor.
Ah, good. I know it was here for many years. I thought
Yep.
it got moved. Anyway, aside from that, I'd like to just bring it out there right now that whole area, the aquifer, the whole area that has been designated in reserve because it's a water source, maintains that. I don't like the idea of Weymouth Great Pond ending up like Whitman's Pond with houses on it and everything else. I just want to see that is a pristine piece of property, and I want to see it have it zoned so that it can't be rezoned to add to the growth that we're experiencing in town. That's my only point on that.
We agree.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hello, Tricia Price, 15 Woodbine Road. People have covered comments and questions I've had, so I'm not going to reiterate what Kathy Swain spoke of, or what Kathy Swain spoke of, or Allison spoke of, or this gentleman right here about the environmental custody of our waterways like Great Pond and Whitman's Pond. Whitman's Pond is used for recreational. No Coast Guard, no wake zones are respected, and there is spawning around that coast every time the herring come in. So it almost scares me that they want to allocate Great Pond and Whitman's Pond for more recreation, Zebra mussels scare the bejesus out of me. It's just a matter of time. The ramp should be closed at Whitman's Pond, but I digress. There was a comment, Mariano has a personal interest in the base development. I'm curious what his personal interest is, considering he's been involved in legislative changes that I'm gonna say is why the water is not at the base anymore.
He represents the town of Weymouth,
I know he does. I understand that. That's my point.
and he's gonna be a huge help in this project
I understand. He's been touting that all
and the
along.
future of Weymouth.
Oh, I absolutely get that. And, look forward to his participation for doing so because there's no water at the base. And every slide that says we're ahead of schedule, oh, no, 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 no. You're behind schedule. The date you need to benchmark this against is when the FEIR came out in 2007, because the potential of that base has not been realized, and we've heard developers say, we don't know what's happening with the water.
We're looking ahead.
And we've heard you say just now, we expect them to. Well, we expected Lennar, Eleanor, Starwood, L-Star to bring water in. We expected to have revenue. You're talking about a water permit that says we can have 17 million gallons per day. Where's the wastewater for this going to? So when you're touting a plan to support the base project that we've had 4 developers literally take the money and run and take the developmental potential of that property away from the town because the water was not bought in, you must consider the expenses of this water. And can we please go back to the final environmental impact report? Get the water into the base. Your slide about demand projections was very interesting because it seems to be flatlined, except for the base development, which means you understand from a water capacity standpoint the hard infrastructure limits that Weymouth has. You have 2-lane roads going through the neighborhood, and right now it takes 45 minutes from what I hear to go from South Weymouth to North Weymouth. So great, you have 17 million gallons per day. We're gonna have to get a Prop 2.5 override for wastewater sewer improvements and road expansions. And who's gonna be able to get home in time for dinner?
Was that your question?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
David Rubin, I'm a member of the SRA board, but I'm not speaking for the SRA board. I'm speaking as a citizen of Weymouth, specifically because if I had never heard of Southfield, and if I, for some nonsensical reason, was against the development of Southfield, I, as a citizen of Weymouth, would be vocally supporting this effort and congratulate the Headland administration on pursuing what is clearly a controversial issue. I think some of these questions, they're all good, but we're arguing about 4.2 versus 4.65 and kayaks and Great Pond and whatever else there is. This is an expensive proposition, but we have some of the cleanest, most abundant water on Earth sitting on our geographic doorstep. This application, which is already funded, explores how we can get that to Weymouth, which is absolutely game-changing for the future of Weymouth for the next 100 years, 200 years. The water situation on the South Shore, everybody knows it, it's somewhere between terrible and catastrophic over that time frame. And again, we have the opportunity to secure the best water supply, perhaps on Earth, definitely in the country. And our kids will congratulate us for exploring this option 100 years from now. That's what we need to focus on.
Hi, Linda Rubin, South Weymouth. I've been hearing some people talk specifically about the base. This is not a base problem. This is a Weymouth problem. And not only that, but I'm hearing that the stars are aligning and, there's some wonderful things potentially that we're gonna be able to do for the entire town, not just for the base. Now, this is an investment, no doubt about it, and I know people are scared and concerned about that investment. But think about that. Look at this beautiful building we're all in. This is an investment that the town made for everyone. Wait a minute, I've never been in this library prior to this day, but it's for the betterment of the town. What about the schools? I don't have children that go here, but wait a minute, it's for the betterment of the town, for everyone, for everyone. And I hope everyone realizes it's not just about the base. It's not, it's for everyone here, and I hope you would all appreciate it once. I hope we do get the water from MWRA. Thank you.
Don Stewart, 549 Essex Street in Weymouth. I have just one question. Is the main thrust of hooking up to the MWRA to advance future development in the town? Is that what is that what it's for?
It's not the thrust, but we
How
know-
can it not be the trust?
Because we know we have a limited supply, a fixed limited supply of water. It's gonna run out someday for all of us. It may not be, like I said at the beginning, it may not be 5 years, 15 years, but it's gonna run out. And we have a chance right now, again, with the stars aligned and savings on the table, to fix that problem. And I'm not fixing it for the next 5 years, I'm fixing it for the next 50 and 100 years. And, cause we're gonna need it. And we can do it now, probably better than we could ever do it any other time as far as cost and impacts to the town. Yes, does it include development of the South Weymouth Naval Air Station? Of course it does, it always has. That's always been a goal of this town, is to redevelop the Naval Air Station. And we need water to do that as well. But then it becomes, it's bigger than that now. It's bigger than that because of, and we got a scare during COVID when we saw our water use shoot up right to the border of our usage, our limits. And so we got a scare during COVID that we got close to our limit, and that could happen anytime. That pandemic had more of an impact on our water use than any development in this town.
The town got a scare in the 60s when Great Pond dried up in the drought.
So COVID had a bigger impact on water use than any of the development that's happened in the last 8 years.
One question is, if we stopped all development in Weymouth right now, right, would we have enough water? We probably would have enough water for the next 50 years.
And then we have no money. We have no economic base.
So you're gonna just build out Weymouth, that's the
I'll
plan?
tell you right now, because right now I'm also going through the town budget, the FY25 town budget, which I author, and it's in rough shape. Our health insurance costs are way up, are going way up. We have limited revenue. There's no revenue coming from the state as far as local aid, flat. Our local receipts are pretty flat because we haven't raised fees in quite a while. And things just level off. The only reason we have any revenue coming into this town right now is the tax levy. And right now we have, and I'm gonna announce it for the first time, I guess, probably a $7 or $8 million shortfall in our budget right now. We typically have about $6.5 million in new revenue. This year so far, we've only discovered a little over 4 million.
That's not
not
my question.
I'm getting to it. 2 million of that is new growth. $2 million of our available revenue is new growth from the redevelopment that we've done in the town over the last 8 years. Again, with minimal impact to the town.
Okay.
And so without development, we have no money for anything.
So without development, right, then we can't meet our expectations, if I can say that.
Providing
In other words,
services?
I'm saying if we stopped this building in the town, right, we'd have plenty of water. And I don't know, but that's how I feel.
And we wouldn't have any teachers, we wouldn't have any firefighters, we wouldn't have any policemen.
Okay, when's the building gonna stop? It has to stop sometime.
It does, and
It
so
can't
we're-
come on, it can't go on for eternity.
It does, and then we're building the base.
May I? Just briefly, I know I compared us with Braintree on a couple of water issues. I think there's a lesson here in the tale of two towns where when I came in a little over 8 years ago, we think about what our playing fields look like. This building was falling down, okay? We had a school falling down, and we had $1 million in our stabilization fund. The town of Braintree had 10 million, okay? We did a rezoning. We replace blighted properties with development, or you can call it redevelopment. I don't think anyone longs for the day of the BOMO coming back, or, you know, some of these properties that have been redeveloped. Now, not everybody likes change. I get that. There's things that have changed here in town that I don't like, okay? But if you look at what's gone on over the last 8 years, Braintree decided they were gonna freeze development and they were gonna work on a master plan. 4 years later, that master plan isn't done, okay? And they shut off new growth. They've gone from 10 million in their stabilization fund to nothing. And now they face a $10 million budget deficit. They're gonna get ready to lay off. You watch what happens this year in Braintree. They're gonna get ready to lay off teachers. You got unions that want raises every year that they're not gonna be able to meet. You're gonna have difficult contract negotiations. And they're revisiting that whole concept of having shut off development and not allowing any new growth in their tax base. And Ted is right. State assistance to this town is flat in terms of local aid, Chapter 70 education aid. The only thing we survive on to meet the demands and the pressures that we have, like increased health insurance costs. You saw our teachers on the verge of a strike. They want a raise every year. Our firefighters want a raise every year, okay? The only way we meet those demands has been, over the last 8 years, through one-time fees like building permit fees and new growth in our tax base. That's it. And we're limited by Proposition 2.5, as you know. And Don, you were one of the first people on my doorstep when I was a newly elected mayor. You were advocating for a nearly $1 million capital project, which the town had been kicking the can on down the road, which nobody talks about, the restoration of Memorial Wall at the Ralph Talbot Amphitheater. There was no way for us to do that if we didn't have new growth in our tax base. So people that advocate for education and hiring new teachers and meeting the demands that teachers put on the table and say, well, we have to stop building. You cannot have both. You cannot do it. We can argue about design of buildings, I get it. We can argue about where that new growth should occur. I know that we had that discussion back when we did our rezoning of our commercial corridors. We've agreed that in some cases, the demand outstripped what we anticipated we would see for demand, and we worked with the council to strip away part of the overlay. But I can tell you this, I mean, it's not on our radar screen for any new rezoning. I know we're doing a study in Route 3A in Bicknell Square, but other than that, I don't believe that we have any desire or vision for rezoning anywhere else in town. I think most of the new growth you're gonna see over the next few decades is going to happen in Union Point, which is why we've come to this fork in the road. Does it make sense to partner with Union Point on this effort? This is a long-term solution for the town. And again, those factors that we talked about consistently tonight, about the stars being in alignment, if we were in the position that Braintree was in a few years ago and made that costly decision to have to partner with Holbrook and Randolph to build a new treatment plant, I mean, that's a lost opportunity for them, really. If this had happened, the waiving of the fee had happened sooner, again, I think they'd be in the same position with us, and it probably would have benefited us because we could have piggybacked on them, because they're closer to the source.
You've answered my question. Basically, we need the water to keep building. That's what I say, so you can get revenue.
We're gonna need water anyway. I mean, we're gonna need water anyway.
I disagree.
It's a finite resource on the South Shore.
Yeah, if you stop building, but you're gonna keep building, and the only way you can keep building is hook up to the MWRA. That's the fact.
Well, you're gonna see it, you're gonna
That's a
see,
fact.
Ted has just mentioned, I think he didn't hit on it,
I don't wanna belabor this too
hit on
much.
it in a major way, but, and he can elaborate if he wants, but the growth in our tax base has actually leveled off. It's declined, I think, from the 2 previous years. So there's less building happening for a lot of reasons, interest rates, things like that. The demand on our commercial corridors where the rezoning took place, less available redevelopment opportunities in town. Again, the growth is going to come in the future from Union Point.
Okay, but you've answered my question.
Okay.
I mean, you know, you've answered the question. Thank you.
And just one thing I think is important, that the difference between the Southfield redevelopment, an important part of our economic future and our tax base is the commercial component. We don't have enough, as far as the tax base is, commercial component to our tax base. And so Union Point will add to our commercial component, which helps just in the future years when overall development is less. Building that base with commercial tax base helps the future when that happens. But yeah, already our building permit revenue is coming down this year. That's part of the reason we're in the little bit of the shortfall we are, mostly because of healthcare, but go ahead.
I just want to add one comment to that, Ted. So most of the development in Weymouth outside of Union Point is redevelopment of existing properties. Very few of the new development in Weymouth outside of Union Point is on virgin land. Jackson Square, those 200 units will be built on existing properties now that have one-story buildings, non-functioning buildings. They're not virgin, it's not virgin land that we're taking away and developing. These are all redevelopment projects that help clean up. I know it's hard to believe, but Weymouth has blight, and I won't get on where it is, but if you have eyes and you look around, it's kind of like you get used to your dirty curtains at home and you never change them. Sometimes we think we're living in paradise, but when you look at stuff. So bottom line is, I don't want to belabor it, but it's mostly redevelopment of blighted properties that we've been trying to do in Weymouth.
Hey, we'll stay as late as the library allows us, but can we let people that haven't asked the question defer to them in the line? I think that would be helpful.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, my name's Mike Ricciardi, and I live on Summer Street. In general, I'm in favor of Weymouth accessing MWRA water. But now, in recent years, to meet demand for water, the Mill River has been pumped dry in periods of low precipitation. When the water level in the stream goes down, vegetation starts to grow into the stream channel, and then when we need the channel's compromised. When the airbase went to private ownership, the promises of environmental improvements barely were realized. I searched the state's database of brownfield sites today. Admittedly, some of the brownfield sites have been cleaned up, but others have been foisted off onto other agencies. Most remain with detectable levels of contaminants, some with restricted use. Areas deemed core habitat and critical natural landscape lie under airplane runways and the dirigible landing pad. I feel now is the opportunity Weymouth should consider asking for some environmental restitution for the Mill River. I'd like to ask that you think about, now's probably the wrong time to be asking about this, but I'd like you to consider $75,000 for a study to restore the Mill River and to find the money to remove the defunct dam that's on the Mill River. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Martin Downey. I'm from North Weymouth. We seem to be making the assumption that the green line up here on the board here is not only the preferred route, but the one that's gonna happen as far as the application. Now, is it my understanding that all three of these are in line in case one of them, I was under the impression before that in order to tie into the MWRA, you had to be adjacent to a city that already had the MWRA. Is that something that was or was not before? Does anyone know that?
Actually, Ted, if you go to the slide that shows the sort of zoomed out view, I think it's the map before. You see that orange line there?
Yes.
Goes through Canton. So that That is Stoughton's feed to the MWRA that goes through Canton. That is not an MWRA pipeline, that is a Stoughton pipeline that goes through Canton. So it's a similar situation to what we're proposing here. So it's not unprecedented for the arrangement that we're proposing.
Okay, but it still has to be something that Braintree would have to agree with in order to get through, right?
Certainly.
So if Braintree, for whatever reason, decides that the cost, the nature of its interruption would be a fact, then we could bring water in on either one. I guess my question is on the application itself. It seems like we're putting all our eggs, our preferred route at the head of, instead of the other two. Coming from North Weymouth, the one on Route 3A certainly wouldn't bother me.
Right, that's exactly why we have three options, is because during this process, if we go and meet with Braintree and they say, get out, we have the other two to pursue.
Okay, so it is an equal type of thing that you're going to...
Yeah, it's definitely a preferred option for different reasons, getting to the high zone, other reasons like, you know, that engineers tell me are preferred. But then we have other factors that are still yet to be determined.
Yeah, I never worry about the hydronic thing. We have plenty of pumps.
Thank you. Yeah, there we go. Folks that haven't been up there yet.
I'd just like to be brief, and one question was the rule, which is, I guess, out the window, but I would just wonder how many people here have ever drank a glass of MWRA water. Mr. Rubin, I would allude to that. I would say that I lived in a town for 20 years that had MWRA. And I can tell you that the water, we drank the water all the time. At this point in Weymouth, in all fairness, I had to buy a Brita filter. I had to do that, and it still isn't great, but it's much better. MWRA water is worth doing. And all of this conversation has been about cost, and I understand money is money. Everybody's concerned about it. But whatever it takes, the elephant in the corner is that you need to do MWRA for the safety and the health of the people in Weymouth. That's what I had to say. Thank you.
Somebody said that the biggest conservation factor in Weymouth water was the fact that you couldn't drink it.
Good evening, I'm Nancy O'Neill from North Weymouth, and I have just a recommendation. This is a very emotional and complicated topic, and many of my friends and neighbors were unaware of this meeting. And not everyone's on Facebook, not everybody reads the Ledger. So I think
That's an understatement, unfortunately.
I think a lot of folks would appreciate it if, you know, a separate mailing could come out in the future with some prior notice, or to have it in the notice in, say, the water bill, if the timing is appropriate, but to somehow get the word out, because many people were just unaware of this meeting, and I think we can do a better job with that. Thank you.
I struggle with that almost on a daily basis, definitely a weekly basis, on how we communicate to residents. We don't have that commonality of, I was a ledger carrier for a while, and I mean, I dropped it in every mailbox, and everyone had that resource. And now we're kind of fragmented. And it seems like more people get information from social media than they do newspapers right now, which is unfortunate, but. We got one more behind you that hasn't spoken.
Hi, I'm Valerie Russo from Weymouth Heights. One comment, one question, unrelated. Please try to stay away from the compressor station on the chosen route. Even though I'm not an expert in that, the folks against the compressor station have alerted some issues. Like, you'd probably want to just stay away from that. God forbid there be an issue, go for the other route. Good job, go for the other route. Now my question. You probably answered it, but make it clear, because none of us were sure if you answered it. Will Great Pond be maintained as a backup water supply with water treatment facilities maintained? Period, forever, you know, not just a little pond to do things in, but maintained as a backup. That's all my questions.
I thought we hit upon that, but we'll take another crack at it.
So that is our initial submission here, that's, going forward in April, is for the Weymouth's water supplies to be phased out over time. Initially, the groundwater supplies would be phased out, and then eventually Great Pond. Now, is that a guarantee of anything? No, this is our first submittal. We have, countless regulatory meetings and questions and responses to go through. So that is the goal, and
Is that a good idea, though? I mean, I don't know. Why is that a good idea, or why is it not?
Are you saying, Valerie, saying, is it a good idea to take it off as a backup source?
Yeah, like, why would you want to do that?
Well, go ahead.
I don't think the idea is that it would be taken out as, just because we say we're taking it offline. I think the idea is that it would always be there as an emergency water supply. But, the question is, do you have a water treatment plant that's staffed 24 hours a day, pumping water like it is now?
But you want it to be available to do that. If you need it, you wouldn't want the whole treatment plant falling apart, would you? Because then you could never treat it, and it really wouldn't be backup.
Yeah, I mean, again, these are details we have to work out, but, there are options. There are towns who have sort of gone through this process, and they put their treatment plant in sort of a standby state. So it could be pumped. It's maintained to a level that, you could turn it on, but you just don't run it unless you need to. So, there's a lot of options. There's a range of things we could do for the status of Great Pond out in the future. And those things need to be determined.
Once you decide how you're going to do that, because I think that's kind of important. Because if you use the word backup, you want to know what does that mean?
Yeah, and that's all gonna get flushed out through this process.
No pun intended.
No, couldn't help myself.
Yeah, I don't think the state or the MWRA will let you abandon an aquifer in a water resource, but that's my thought. But going back to the green line again, and it looks like you've already developed a connection into the South Weymouth Naval Air Station property. So, 20 years ago, people thought Stewart taking over Kearney Hospital was a great idea, right? All that money, they're gonna develop it, they're gonna run it. And I'm just worried that we're getting taken here by the developers, and I want them to pay their fair share, whatever that is. They couldn't do their development without a 5-mile, 10-inch line. So are they still paying the equivalent to that? Are they gonna take a lot of profit out of this and, say, see you later to Weymouth?
You gotta go out and have a cup of coffee with John after, right?
Hi, sorry. I just had a quick question that I wanted to ask. Brookfield doesn't own any acreage right now, correct? They don't own any property up there.
No, they control significant.
Do they own it?
You wanna talk tonight, John?
But regardless, what my question is the proposal is for thousands of apartments. And I'm just wondering, if we go forward with MWRA, and Mr. Tuhig had said, when we proposed medical facility up there, like labs, things along those lines, trauma center, medical and healthcare use a ton of water every day. And his point was that didn't seem logical because we don't have any water. But if we do have the water, could the proposed plan be revisited to offer something to the community that is less taxing in terms of the overall number of apartments and maybe diversify into something that's requires fewer people living there and like something like medical labs or server farms, things along those lines? Is there any chance for that?
I don't know, I mean, a lot is market dependent and demand. You're correct about medical use. I know Social Hospital by far is our biggest water user here in town, by far. But I don't know if John wants to make any general comments, or Bob, he's our planner, if you want to comment on that. We'd love, I mean, we're excited with Children's Hospital that is just about to open on Libby Parkway, which I will add, even though they're a nonprofit, that is a tax generator for us because they're leasing the property. So that's adding to our tax base. That's a great addition to the town. We would certainly welcome more medical facilities here in town. We think it's a good use, especially when they're paying property taxes, unlike South Shore Hospital, which is on a pilot situation because they're a nonprofit. But I'll give it to either of those guys.
I'll take a stab at it. So the zoning that was approved allowed up to 2 million square feet of commercial space and up to 6,000 residential units. I think the total overall development square footage hasn't changed. I think we talked about 13 million square feet, if I'm not mistaken on that. John or Bill, that's about the number. So that's kind of like, and that's with Abington, don't forget, it's Abington, Rockland, and Weymouth. Although to be fair, the majority of the land area is in Weymouth, which in my opinion, is good for Weymouth because the revenue that we'll be getting from the project. So New England Development has done a lot of medical labs. They're doing it right now in other communities. And what they've said to us in a public forum is medical labs eat up a ton of water. So we're getting, I think the maximum we can get is 7.5 million gallons. That's the capacity that MWRA can give us from the Blue Hills right now. So if they put more of medical, they would probably definitely have to reduce the residential. And they do have some flexibility in their zoning to do that. But don't forget, not to be selfish for Weymouth proper, we do still have some measured development that we want to do in Weymouth, like redeveloping Jackson Square, maybe doing a little bit of redevelopment in Columbian Square, and obviously Weymouth Landing. Everyone knows that those are the priorities for the town, and some limited development on some parcels that are still under the commercial corridor overlay district. So we only have a 7.5 million out there, and so there could be some switches. Some of that 2 million square feet could be into lab space, and we'd have to evaluate it at the time. But I think the zoning is a little bit flexible, but basically I think what they said holds true on it. So we'd like to get medical lab, but it eats, as you said, it eats a lot of water up.
Can you pitch for more water from MWRA if you have a plan?
Well, as Ted said, once they make this a connection, and Ryan, you said it was up to 15.6? Yeah. But that's going to be a few years down the line. So it's a balancing act, and we're very judicious in this whole thing. We're trying to really be selective of what gets developed in Weymouth. We're not just letting everyone in. We had a little tit for tat with Vine Street. That's water over the dam or under the dam now, but whatever. Because we do have our priorities.
Under the bridge.
Under the bridge, thank you. Into the basement, whatever, on it. But that's your answer to it. So, we hopefully, and the other thing I just want to say, I believe, I could be wrong, this is the first time that a mayor has partnering with a developer of Unit Point. So we're in this together. So I know there's a fear that New England Development might say, adios, we're out of here. We're stupid, we're not that stupid to make the same mistakes that were made with Elstar and the other people, which is basically, imparting my crudeness, chew and screw. It's not gonna be like that. We're not gonna let them build a few hundred units and say, adios, we made some money and go. They're kind of like locked into us now in this partnership, which I think is good for them and us. We both have to trust each other in the process. They're gonna have to trust Weymouth, and we're gonna have to trust them. But we're kind of like locked in this, like in a marriage, because you always get divorces also in a marriage, but that's kind of like where we are with it.
We have two first-timers in line, so why don't we let them?
I just have one quick comment I want to make.
Hi, I came here to the meeting to get information, and I hesitated in coming up because of the snarkiness and disrespect I heard from people asking questions. I read in the paper last week that Quincy water tasted like metal and was brown, and I know they're WMRA. I spoke to a man in the back of the room who gave me some information, and he said that may be coming from their pipes. Who is in charge of the pipes that go into the homes? Is that on the town or is that on the residents? And I would appreciate an answer with respect.
Well, I'm gonna turn it over to the experts, but our delivery system within the borders of Weymouth are our pipes.
So if the pipes, as it is in Quincy apparently, if something is wrong with the homes to the MWRA pipes and the water that people are getting tastes like metal or is brown and it needs to be replaced, who replaces those?
The city of Quincy, I would assume. I don't know the specific example
Who
you're
will
using.
replace those in Weymouth if that happens?
I just said Weymouth's infrastructure is our infrastructure. Dave, you want, Kenan, you want to comment on that?
For a point of clarification, the town is responsible for the water mains that go down the street.
Cable.
The town is responsible for the water mains in the road and the connection from the water main to the curb stop at the edge of the property. The homeowner is responsible for the pipe from the edge of the property into their home. Now, there are a lot of Weymouth homes that are old, that have old cement line pipe, old Galvy pipe.
Right.
Those type of pipes will generate a certain amount of iron and manganese into the house. And they have the option to replace those with
Right,
copper.
and
But
that's
that's on the homeowner.
Yes, and that's exactly what I had anticipated for an answer. But when I looked around here earlier tonight, we have a lot of elderly people here, probably on fixed incomes. So I'm thinking, they're thinking, water is expensive as it is. And then what is the accrued cost after that? That was my question. You answered it, and I thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Grotta. I live over there. You can probably see my TV when you walk out and leave tonight. I just want to say a couple things. It seems pretty clear that this is an inevitability. Weymouth is going to have to make some kind of move at some point, and then the rest of the South Shore in conjunction with that. And this makes the most sense for the long term, not just of here, but the rest of the area, not only for development, but as, again, an inevitable process. So it's important that we work together while we have an opportunity to save an immediate $30 million. I mean, that is not just an insignificant amount, but in addition to that, every other opportunity that we have in order for, as they're saying, the stars aligning, to get together and to get this to function. I also just want to make, a real quick comment. It seems like there's always this sort of anti-development mentality. Again, I'm a young professional. I'm in my 30s. I don't look it or sound it. But, these are the type of people that are moving to this community. So every time we come together and we say, hey, we're tired of these people coming in, you're talking to me. So I kind of take that personally. Because that is the area. Now, I grew up here, but I know everybody who lives around me. All my neighbors are pretty much in the same boat. In addition to that, it's just looking forward to seeing some of these changes really take place. That's been very positive, including the place that we're standing right now and the park that we're about to walk through when we leave here. This is not unfounded. So, I'm just really happy to see the progress move in that direction.
Can I speak now without getting killed here? I just wanted to make a quick comment about, somebody over here asked about communication. And this had come up before in one of the meetings. Patriot Ledger is a waste of time. I know by law, I think you still have to publish in it. But, when I get it electronically, there's 3 articles that are 3 days old when you go through it. And nobody goes in and reads the back pages of it. So my suggestion would be, can we hook up the meeting notification through the emergency system that we have, get alerts already on our phones? That's all.
We have an email notification system that you can sign up for separately, so whenever a meeting is posted, for a certain, whatever topic you sign up for,
Yeah.
you'll get a notification
But how do we
of
get that information out to these people that aren't aware of it?
We put it out constantly. I mean, we can send it out again, but it's on the town website as well, of where you can sign
Yeah,
up for
I'm signed
email.
up for it. I'm just curious
Yeah,
for other people.
on the email notifications. There's actually a separate page on the town website about this topic alone with this presentation will be added to it, and all the other presentations and other information as backup is on that page as well on the town website. In addition to, again, we try to saturate the information out there, both on social media, through the website, through emails.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. It's about timing. When the water bills come out, it would have to be when we know there's a meeting. We could add it if the timing allows, yeah. Yep.
I wanted to say thank you to everybody here tonight, especially to Mayor Headland and his administration, SRA, the experts who are looking at water and have studied it, have the answers, might not have the answers yet because they want to go forward with the MWRA application. There's some people in here who have been talking about the developers. My name's Heidi Anderson, by the way. I live in Union Point.
Thanks.
Why don't you look up Brookfield Properties and New England Development and see what you find out about them. World-class developers. We are so thankful and grateful to have them in Union Point. And by the way, I live in Union Point, but I consider myself a Weymouth resident. And I hope that everybody here thinks that people who live in Union Point are Weymouth residents as well. My friend Linda spoke about the new school and about new things going on here in Weymouth. I don't have anybody in the school, but boy, I was for Chapman. We are running out of water everywhere. My last job, I was an environmental consultant. This is all over the country. We need to act now. This sounds like a great plan, and it sounds like the answers about the unaccounted water and all the other issues are gonna work themselves out. We need to trust the experts, stay involved, but let's get this going. Thank you very much.
You know, I stopped watering my lawn 2 years ago because it just got too damn hot, not enough water in the town. So it's just, you can't predict climate change. So that's a big factor here that no one can figure out. So to have the MWRA is absolutely necessary. But I'm just concerned that, we have this missing water, we have an aging infrastructure in other parts of the town other than what's gonna happen here, and that will get, just ignored or misplaced. And if, you ran all new pipes throughout the town or had a plan to do that, you'd find all the missing water, so.
Thanks. We absolutely share those concerns, and again, part of the process is identifying how to address the unaccounted for water, and the infrastructure improvements are they've been ignored in decades in the past, and we're still trying to play catch up with that, and we'll continue to.
Elizabeth Foster Nolan, 54 House Rock Road in Weymouth. Again, thank you for having this meeting. Clearly, we've got the dream team. I mean, there's so much work, so much due diligence that is going through this, both with the people who are working for Weymouth as well as those internally in Weymouth. So I do appreciate that. I anticipate getting additional information as this project goes along, which will be extremely helpful because you don't have all the answers today. You're not expected to have all the answers today. It's a process, and we have to be patient with the process. And what I am seeing is transparency here. I appreciate that. Ted, in terms of notification, I'm wondering if you could Jeff could put at the end of this filming the link so that people can in fact get those notifications through email.
Yep.
Because I think there will be a lot of people who will be watching this. Yep. To get that information. And then perhaps through other sources in town where we send out newsletters. Perhaps that can go, and I'll make a plug for the senior center that we can put that in the senior center, perhaps in the libraries. Yep. Email that goes out, their newsletter, just other points where we know people are reading information. Because that's what I rely on. I rely on those emails from the town.
Great ideas. And again, people have mentioned the water sewer bill. We have put MWRA information in the water sewer bills in the past year. We'll continue to do that. It's harder for when a meeting is scheduled because by the time they get those notices, the meeting's gonna be over. But we will continue to use water sewer bills for informing residents about this.
My name's Sarah. I live on Rosine Ave. I guess the only question I've been asking myself is if there's drought concerns here, why there wouldn't be drought concerns there? I think it would be everywhere, so that's the one part I can't really understand. In that also, if we're going to be investing in bringing water from there to here, why we wouldn't invest money in our own water supply. I just couldn't understand what the difference was between if there was someone who went out there and was like, oh, we'll spend this much to fix our own, or we can save this much by, getting it from over here. So I guess that just doesn't add up for me.
No, and you're right, and we have been, we're just finishing up a $3 million project of our water mains and one of our more chronic failures over time. And so, and part of the redevelopment and the income and revenue we've created has allowed us to do some of that. And then actually the federal money for ARPA, we have taken a great portion of that, over $10 million, and committed it to water sewer improvements. Obviously, for me, it's decade-old, not doing that. And actually, when you talk about our rates and comparing it to MWRA, I would suggest our rates are artificially low because we haven't made those upgrades over the last decades. And if we had, the rates would be higher. We've also made other, we don't regret, decisions that during COVID, when people were laid off and couldn't afford it, we kept the rates flat. Not every town did that. So I would suggest our rates are artificially low because of our lack of investment in the past and decisions like that. Again, don't regret it at all because people needed that help during COVID when they weren't working and all of that. But we're trying to play catch up. Well, like I said, we're doing this $3 million job. We're spending up to $10 million of the ARPA money on water sewer, both upgrades.
Ken, do you want to just list some of the projects that are ongoing right now?
Just grab the mic.
Significantly higher than
Just grab the mic.
It's on.
It's on.
Yeah, so the mayor just mentioned.
Not on.
Just give them the other one's better. Just get that one's. It's already on. Just don't worry about it. It's on.
Okay. So the mayor just mentioned we just finished a water main project that was down Washington Street. That was one of our more significant failure pipes. And like he said, that was a $3.5 million commitment there. We've done several smaller version repairs on water lines throughout the town in different locations. It's been more reactive, actually, in my experience here. And it's again, it speaks to Ted's indication that improvements weren't done significantly in the past. When I first got here, we went into the Century Road area and did that whole subdivision over with new water main. We're currently doing an LCI project with sewer under the ARPA funds in the Idlewell area. We also did several water mains in the Idlewell area. It was a reconstruction effort under my part of being here. We're constantly chasing it. We're more reactive, unfortunately, than proactive because it was mentioned earlier. Columbian Square is a big one under 3
million.
3 million.
So basically, are you saying that it would be way more to fix what's going on now than it would be to get water from somewhere else?
We're saying that we're actively pursuing a lot of the things that are in failure now. The squares that are under development, we just identified a whole bunch of work for the Jackson Square in anticipation of the work that's going to be forthcoming in that area, so they'll be able to, accommodate the buildings that are going to be put there. It's a long list, a long process. It's a big town with many infrastructure improvements that are certainly needed, regardless of where the water is coming from, as we proceed into the future. We talked about North Weymouth. There was some mentioning of some of the smaller pipes in that area, the side streets and whatnot, that we're actively individually taking on and replacing.
So that'll be in addition to?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's clear. Yeah, just want to make it clear. So the MWRA hookup to water is not going to solve our infrastructure problems. We're still going to work on that parallel and into the future. That's a capacity issue that we're.
The water that we get, we're afraid we're going to run out.
The water we have
That's the whole
now.
reason.
Yeah, the water we have now, it's a capacity issue. So the water we have now through our sources, ground and surface, will eventually run out. It's a pond. It's only, so much water.
As opposed to the reservoir, where do they get it from?
The Quabbin's overflowing its
So
pipes.
that's where the MWRA water comes from. They have
Right.
over 100 million gallons of surplus water. They've set aside 51 million of that for new communities, and that's what we're trying to tap into. But we're still gonna need to improve our infrastructure parallel to that and in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda D'Angelo. I'm president of the Back River Watershed Association. I'm very gratified to see the whole team working together. I appreciate that we are taking this water supply problem seriously. There is a vision in pursuing this program with the MWRA water. We all know what we're facing, water shortages. God knows what's going to happen in 20 years. This is the moment to go for this. We're talking about improvement for the entire community. No matter what you see going on with climate change and the controversy that it brings, we recognize that we cannot sustain our water supply going into the future by pumping out ponds with problems. It just isn't realistic. We have to have a plan. We have to think about public health. We have to think about the fact that our environment is going to also benefit. We're all concerned about the nature. We have a fabulous system of rivers. We have our Back River Trail and all the wildlife there. Hopefully, there's going to be enough water that we can honestly say that our Weymouth historic herring run is also going to benefit. And, you know, we understand the importance of, you know, helping our total ecosystem. You need the water. It's going to be great for the next generation of people that live in Weymouth. So this is an improvement across the whole community, and I want to say thank you to everyone here that's worked on this. It's hard work, and it's going to take a long time. And thank you, Ted. I know you're the point person for the town on that. And so I just want to say that I definitely agree this is the right measure and the right time. And I hope that everyone comes together as a community. We're not Union Point people. We're not just Weymouth proper people. We are Weymouth people. So let's think about it that way.
Oh, no. Okay, I appreciate it. I just want to point out Peter Foreman here, Chair of the South Shore Chamber, another great partner of ours in this project, and helped us get the expansion study done as well for the water study. I just want to say thanks. First of all, Mayor Headlam, I want to thank our team, again, working hard for you. We appreciate you coming tonight. We appreciate the questions. We really do appreciate the feedback. We do take them to heart, and we know this is a very complex and long process. So this won't be the last time you get this opportunity, and we'll do what we can to make sure the information gets out there as widely as possible. And thanks again. Take care.